The desert had a strange way of remembering things. People believed it was empty, lifeless, just an endless ocean of sand stretching beyond what the eye could see. But they never stayed long enough to understand it. They never listened closely enough. Because if they had, they would have realized something unsettling. The desert never forgets. Every step taken on its surface, every whispered word carried away by the wind, every silent scream buried beneath its stillness, it holds on to all of it. It doesn't speak, but it remembers. And sometimes, when the night is quiet enough, it gives those memories back not as comfort, but as echoes. He rode through that silence like a man who belonged to it. The rhythm of his horse's hooves pressed softly against the sand, steady and controlled, like a heartbeat refusing to break under pressure. The night wrapped around him in darkness, broken only by the faint glow of the moon and the distant shimmer of stars. To anyone watching, he would have looked composed, powerful, untouchable. But the desert knew better. Because out here, there were no titles. No expectations. No eyes watching him. Out here, he wasn't a king. He was just a man trying to outrun something that refused to let go. This wasn't the first time he had come here. And it wouldn't be the last. The desert had become a habit. A quiet escape from a life that never paused. Whenever the noise of the world grew too loud, whenever the weight of responsibility became unbearable, he came here. Not to find answers, but to avoid them. His horse moved beneath him with a quiet awareness that felt almost human. It didn't need commands, didn't need direction. It simply followed the unspoken rhythm of its rider. It had been with him long enough to recognize the difference between calm and control. Tonight, this wasn't calm. There was tension in the way he held the reins, subtle but present. A heaviness in the way his shoulders remained still, as if even the smallest movement would release something he had spent years holding back. The horse adjusted its pace slightly. Slower. Careful. As if it understood. And maybe it did. Because unlike people, it didn't need explanations. The wind brushed against his face, carrying with it a coolness that felt out of place in the desert. It moved around him, soft at first, then stronger, as if searching for something. Or someone. He exhaled slowly, his gaze fixed ahead. But his mind was somewhere else. It always was. There are memories that fade with time. And then there are memories that become sharper, clearer, more painful. She was one of those memories. He didn't remember the exact moment she became important. There was no grand beginning. No dramatic first meeting. Just a simple moment, that should have meant nothing. But somehow, it became everything. She didn't treat him like the world did. There was no hesitation in her voice. No careful distance. No hidden fear behind polite words. She didn't look at him and see a title, she looked at him and saw a person. And that was dangerous. Because once someone sees you for who you are, you can't go back to being who you were pretending to be. He remembered the first time they came to the desert together. It had been her idea. "Take me somewhere real," she had said, with a small smile that carried more meaning than words. He didn't understand what she meant at the time. But he brought her here. She had laughed when she saw the endless stretch of sand. "This," she had said, raising an eyebrow. "This is what you call real?" He didn't answer. Because for him, it was. They rode side by side that day, the silence between them different from the silence he was used to. It wasn't heavy. It wasn't empty. It was comfortable. "You don't talk much," she had said after a while. "I don't need to," he replied. She smiled slightly. "Or maybe, you just don't want to." That was the first time someone had said something like that to him. Not as a challenge. Not as criticism. But as truth. The memory lingered for a moment longer, then shifted. The present returned like a cold reality. The desert stretched endlessly before him, unchanged, unaffected by the years that had passed. The same path. The same silence. But he wasn't the same. He urged the horse forward, increasing the pace slightly. The wind responded, rising around him, pushing against him as if testing his strength. Or maybe, trying to stop him. But he didn't stop. Because stopping meant remembering. And remembering was the one thing he could never fully escape. There was a night, one that never left him. No matter how much time passed. They had come here again. The same desert. The same endless horizon. But something was different. She was quieter. Not distant. Not cold. Just aware. As if she could feel something he was trying to ignore. "Do you ever wish?" She began softly, her voice almost lost in the wind. He turned slightly, looking at her. "That you weren't who you are?" The question stayed between them. Unanswered. Heavy. He looked ahead again. At the desert. At the path that had no end. Because the truth was, he had never chosen this life. But he could never leave it. And that was the moment everything changed. The next day, she was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. No closure. Just silence. And silence is the loudest thing you can ever hear. Years passed. But the desert remained. And so did he. He kept coming back. Again and again. Riding the same path. Following the same horizon. As if one day, he might find something he had lost. But the desert doesn't return what it takes. The wind grew stronger suddenly, pulling him out of his thoughts. The sand lifted around him, swirling into the air, blurring the distance, erasing the horizon. For a moment, there was nothing. No direction. No clarity. No escape. He slowed the horse to a stop. The world around him became still again. And finally, there was nowhere left to run. He closed his eyes, not to escape, but to face it. The memories. The silence. The truth. That no matter how far he rode, no matter how strong he appeared, no matter how much the world believed he had everything, there was a part of him that was still here. In this desert. Waiting. Unfinished. The sun began to rise slowly, painting the sky in soft shades of gold and orange. A new day. A new beginning. Or at least, that's what people believed. He opened his eyes. Looked ahead. Then turned the horse around. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. Because the world was waiting. Because the crown demanded more than he could give. Because kings don't get to stay lost. As he rode back, the desert remained behind him. Silent. Unchanged. Holding everything he could never take with him. And somewhere, in that endless stretch of sand, a part of him stayed. Forever. He rode like a man chasing freedom, but the truth was, he was just a king, running from a heart that learned to survive, but never learned to heal.